When I first met Lucas, I thought I'd finally met the kind of man who understood silence. He wasn't loud or flashy, just steady. His calm felt safe, like a place I could finally rest in after years of walking on glass. But I was wrong. His calm wasn't safety, it was a shield, one that hid everything he was too weak to face. The first time I met his mother, Eleanor, she greeted me with a smile so polite it almost stung. "You must be Ava," she said, her eyes scanning me as though she were appraising something fragile in a store window. "Lucas has such interesting taste." Her words were dipped in honey, but laced with poison. I smiled back, pretending not to notice, but I did. I noticed everything, especially the way Lucas avoided meeting my eyes. I didn't know it then, but that moment was the start of a quiet war. Eleanor never yelled, never threw insults outright. Her weapons were whispers, insinuations, and carefully crafted stories. To everyone else, she was grace and composure. But to me, she was the storm that smiled. At first, I tried to win her over. I cooked her favorite meals, remembered her birthdays, even sat through her long stories about the women who came before me. She'd say things like, "Lucas always chooses women who need fixing. I suppose he gets that from me." And then one night, after dinner, she leaned across the table and said it softly, like she was offering advice. "You'll leave, Ava, just like the others. Women like you always do." I froze. "What do you mean, women like me?" She smiled. "The ones who mistake survival for love." That night, I asked Lucas what she meant. He sighed, like he was tired of hearing about it. "Mom just speaks her mind. Don't take it personally." But that's what broke me, the way he didn't defend me. The way he let her words hang between us, unchallenged. The next weeks were worse. Subtle jabs, small humiliations. Eleanor would forget to set a plate for me at family dinners. She'd post pictures with captions like, "Just me and my favorite person in the world, my son," even when I was sitting right there. And Lucas? He said nothing. Until the night I told him I couldn't do it anymore. "I'm tired," I said, my voice cracking. Tired of feeling like an intruder in my own home. He looked at me, his face pale. "Ava, please don't go." "Why should I stay, Lucas? You never choose me." "I do," he whispered. "You just don't see it. Please don't leave. I'll talk to her." But he didn't. A week later, Eleanor showed up at our apartment uninvited. She was holding a framed photo of Lucas and his ex-wife. She left because she couldn't handle the pressure, she said, placing the photo on our coffee table like it was a relic. "And you, dear, you're no different." That was the moment something inside me shifted. I realized that if I kept waiting for Lucas to protect me, I'd disappear, quietly, just like the others she mentioned. So I stopped waiting. Over the next month, I watched, listened, learned. Eleanor had a habit of underestimating me. She'd talk on the phone with her friends, thinking I was out of earshot. "She's fragile," she'd say. "Ava doesn't understand what it means to be part of a real family." But what she didn't know was that her words were becoming my weapon. One evening, Lucas came home with that same defeated look. "Mom thinks you're avoiding her," he said. "I am," I replied coldly, "for my own peace." "She just wants to make amends," I laughed. "No, Lucas, she wants to win." He said nothing, just lowered his eyes like he always did, and in that silence, I realized the only person I needed to convince was her. So I invited Eleanor for dinner, just her. No Lucas. When she arrived, she looked around my home like she was inspecting a stranger's house. "I must admit, I'm surprised you invited me," she said, sitting down. "I wanted to talk," I said. "Woman to woman." She smirked. "About what?" "About why you think I'll leave." The air grew still. Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Because, Ava," she said softly, "you don't belong here. You're not built for my son's world." I smiled then calmly, but there was something in my tone she wasn't expecting. "Funny," I said, "because he's the one who begs me to stay." Her expression faltered, if only for a moment. "What did you say?" she whispered. I leaned forward. "You think I'm the weak one in this story." But the truth, Eleanor, is that your son doesn't sleep without checking if I'm beside him. He doesn't eat unless I remind him to. He doesn't breathe right when we fight. You made him believe love is control. I taught him it's mercy." Her jaw tightened. "You think that makes you powerful?" "No," I said softly. "It makes me necessary, and that's something you'll never be again." The silence that followed was the most satisfying sound I'd ever heard. When Lucas came home later that night, I didn't tell him what happened. He didn't need to know. But I noticed the change the way Eleanor suddenly stopped calling, stopped dropping by, unannounced. And when she finally saw me again at a family gathering weeks later, she didn't smile. She just nodded, quietly. That was the night I realized you don't need to scream to win a war. Sometimes, all it takes is a whisper that lands in the right ear. The silence didn't last. Women like Eleanor never surrender. They retreat only to reload. For a few weeks, she disappeared. No calls, no visits, no condescending remarks. Lucas thought she'd finally come around, but I knew better. That kind of quiet wasn't peace. It was planning. One Friday morning, Lucas left early for work. I was halfway through my coffee when my phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. "You don't belong here. Leave before he realizes who you really are." No name, no clue. But I knew the tone, the phrasing, the venom wrapped in fake concern. It had Eleanor's fingerprints all over it. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Her silence said enough. That evening, when Lucas came home, he was cold, distant. His usual half-smile had vanished. "What's wrong?" I asked. He hesitated. "Mom told me something today." And there it was, the first crack. "She said she ran into one of your old co-workers," he continued, "that they told her you were fired for stealing from the company." I laughed bitterly. "She really said that?" "She sounded concerned, Ava." "She always sounds concerned, Lucas. That's her mask." But his expression didn't soften. "Is it true?" That question hit harder than I expected. He didn't ask how she'd know, or why she'd say it, just whether it was true. That was the moment I realized the problem wasn't just Eleanor, it was him. The man I had defended, the one who begged me to stay, was still tethered to her words like a puppet on invisible strings. I walked past him, steady, emotionless. "You should ask yourself why she needs to make me look small. Maybe then you'll see who she really is." I left him standing there in the kitchen, confused and silent, his favorite state. But I wasn't confused, not anymore. A week passed. I went about my life quietly, but inside I was building something. Revenge doesn't always look like rage, it often looks like preparation. I started collecting the little things Eleanor left behind. Notes, messages, moments of manipulation. The whispers she thought vanished into thin air. I remembered a conversation she had once, during a garden brunch with her charity friends. She didn't see me through the kitchen window as she sipped her tea and said, "Lucas needs someone manageable, not someone with opinions. You can't build a marriage on defiance." That word manageable stayed with me. So I decided to show her what unmanageable looks like. The next family event came 2 weeks later. Eleanor's annual Heritage Luncheon. A perfect blend of self-congratulation and gossip wrapped in pearls and porcelain smiles. Lucas begged me to come, to show goodwill. I agreed, but not for goodwill. The house gleamed as always, white marble floors, gold-framed portraits of ancestors who probably disapproved of everyone in that room. Eleanor floated from guest to guest, a glass of champagne in one hand, charm in the other. When she saw me walk in, her lips twitched into that same tight smile. "Ava," she said, drawing out my name as if tasting something sour. "You look resilient." "Thank you," I replied sweetly. "You look almost sincere." Her friends giggled awkwardly, not sure whether to be impressed or terrified. I could feel her mask crack just slightly. During the toast, she stood up to speak. "Family," she said, her voice melodic, "isn't about blood. It's about loyalty, respect, and tradition, and sometimes outsiders forget that." The room hummed with polite applause. I waited until the noise died down, then stood. My voice was calm, deliberate. "You're right, Eleanor. Family is about loyalty, which is why it's so sad when those closest to us forget what that means. She blinked, frozen, unsure of what I'd do next. Did you know, I continued, that Eleanor here has been calling my old workplace pretending to be me, sending anonymous emails trying to dig up dirt that doesn't exist? The air thickened. Her friends turned to her, eyes wide. Of course, I added, she didn't find anything. But it's fascinating how far a person will go when they're afraid of losing control. Eleanor's face turned pale. That's ridiculous, she snapped. You're making baseless accusations. I smiled gently. Oh, I agree. Which is why I recorded every call she made to my old company. Would anyone like to hear how she introduced herself as Ava Reed, Lucas's wife, trying to confirm a false rumor? The room fell silent. Even Lucas looked like the ground had just disappeared beneath him. I thought we valued honesty here, I said, my tone soft but sharp, especially in family. Eleanor didn't speak. She just sat there, hands trembling slightly, her composure collapsing like glass under pressure. When the luncheon ended, no one looked at her. That night, Lucas confronted me. Why did you humiliate her like that? Because she's been humiliating me for months, I said coldly. The only difference is I gave her the audience she deserves. She's still my mother, he muttered. And I'm still your wife, I replied. But only one of us acts like it. He didn't respond. Just stood there, staring at me like he'd seen someone he didn't recognize. Maybe he hadn't. Maybe the version of me he thought he knew. The quiet, compliant Ava was gone. Days later, I received a message not from Eleanor, but from someone else. Her longtime housekeeper, Marta, an older woman who'd always been kind to me, sent me a simple note. She's sick, Ava. Not the body, the mind. She's unraveling. Part of me felt pity. But pity is a luxury you lose when someone tries to ruin you. Still, when Lucas told me his mother wanted to see me one last time, I agreed. When I walked into her home, the woman who once ruled over her world like a queen now looked small, fragile, almost human. She glanced up weakly. You think you've won, she murmured. No, I said. I just stopped letting you win. She smiled faintly. You remind me of myself. I know, I whispered. That's what scares me. I left her there, surrounded by the same silence she'd once used as her weapon. When I got home that night, Lucas was waiting by the door. He looked broken, torn between guilt and realization. I didn't protect you, he said quietly. No, I replied. You protected her from the truth, but truth has a way of finding its way home. He reached for my hand, but I didn't take it. Sometimes revenge isn't about destroying someone, it's about showing them who they've created. And as I walked past him, into the house that still smelled faintly of roses and regret, I knew this story wasn't about leaving. It was about finally being seen.